I never expected to fall for my millionaire doctor during my private surgery. I will never forget the day everything fell apart. It started like any ordinary morning. I could still feel the cold, sterile chill in the air as I entered the dimly lit hospital room. My heart raced, pounding painfully against my ribcage. The walls felt like they were closing in. I could hardly breathe. I was scared. Doctor Nathaniel Black was unlike anyone I had ever seen. He walked in with an air of mystery. His dark hair, tousled yet perfectly styled. The white coat he wore looked tailored, hugging his toned physique. But it was his piercing blue eyes that captured me, drawing me into the depths of an unexplainable connection. My trembling hands hid beneath the crisp sheets, laying bare my vulnerability. "You're going to be just fine," he said, his voice deep and soothing, yet firm. I wanted to believe him. But something felt off. There was an intensity about him that sent electric chills down my spine, yet I couldn't look away. The way the light caught the edges of his jawline made my heart flutter, a dangerous mix of fear and attraction. As the procedure began, I felt the sharp sting of the anesthetic. My vision blurred. Everything faded to black. Yet, in that swirling darkness, I could still feel the phantom touch of his fingertips brushing against my forearm. The world around me melted away, leaving just us, suspended in time. What was happening? Then it got weird. A sound echoed in the distance, a beeping that felt too frantic, too urgent. Gasping, I woke up to see Dr. Black staring intently at a monitor, concern etched on his handsome face. "Stay with me," he murmured fiercely, leaning closer. The scent of his cologne enveloped me. I wanted to reach out, to pull him into my chaotic world. Suddenly the door burst open, and a flurry of nurses rushed in. My heart dropped. I felt like a marionette caught in a tangled web. What was going on? Tension exploded in the air. Whispers filled the room, but their words were drowned by the drumbeat of my own heart. No one was looking at me then. Just as quickly, everything went silent. A soft light descended from the ceiling, shimmering around Dr. Black, illuminating him like a beacon. Silence. My chest tightened. "This is just a complication," he told the team, but I caught the flicker of uncertainty in his eyes. What did he know that he wasn't telling me? I felt vulnerable and exposed. My heart raced, and I wanted to scream. I wanted answers. But instead, I found myself drowning in his gaze, feeling a mixture of fear and adrenaline rush through me. Was it the anesthesia? Or was it something deeper? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash the like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. I floated in and out of consciousness, the sterile smell of antiseptic invading my senses as I struggled to grasp the reality around me. Each time I awoke, my mind was muddled, lost in a haze of confusion and anxiety. I felt like a ghost, trapped between two worlds, the one I knew and the sterile upheaval I was now part of, days blurred together in the hospital. I was a patient with wounds deeper than the ones stitched on my skin. Each visit from Dr. Black ignited my heart in a way that terrified me. The moments we shared felt charged, those blue eyes held an intensity that beckoned me closer, yet pushed me away. I felt tethered to him, and it was intoxicating. But with that draw came fear, raw and palpable. What if everything came crashing down? One evening, as the sun cast a warm glow through the hospital window, reducing the starkness of my surroundings, I heard footsteps. Dr. Black entered, his expression a mixture of concern and something else, something softer that made my heart race anew. "Hey," he said quietly, almost as if he were afraid his voice might shatter the fragile moment. "How are you feeling today?" "Like I've been run over by a truck," I tried to joke, but it fell flat, the weight of my emotional turmoil pressing down harder than any physical pain. He chuckled lightly, but his eyes carried a sadness that unsettled me. "You're recovering, but we still need to keep a close eye on you." He hesitated before continuing, I need you to be honest with me. Have you been experiencing any unusual symptoms? My heartbeat quickened, and for a moment, I considered unburdening my soul. But instead, I merely shook my head. Something stopped me. Maybe it was the fear of seeing the worry etched on his face change to something darker. His gaze lingered a moment longer before he stood, the silence stretched between us. It was charged, filled with all the words we hadn't said. For a brief moment, I squashed the heaviness in my chest and reached out. Nathaniel, a nurse interrupted, entering with a clipboard. The moment shattered. Nathaniel's demeanor shifted instantly, and I saw the doctor, the professional, return. I'll be back shortly, he said, turning abruptly. The ache of disappointment gnawed at my insides. There was something between us, something that transcended my recovery, yet reality insisted on intruding. I could feel the weight of our unspoken connection, but walls surrounded us, both social norms, my vulnerability, his career. Time passed, and with it came unexpected moments of clarity. I started to notice the little things, the way Nathaniel bit his lip when he was deep in thought, the warmth of his hands against my cooler skin when he examined me. Once or twice, I caught the nurses exchanging knowing glances, laughter softly escaping them as they made light of his apparent distraction. But who wouldn't be distracted by love lurking in the shadows of fear and uncertainty? Then came the night when everything changed. I lay in the dim light of my room, consumed by an overwhelming wave of loneliness. The only sounds were the rhythmic beeping of machines and my own shallow breaths. Suddenly, a sharp knock startled me. The door creaked open, and there stood Nathaniel, his brow furrowed, a piece of paper clutched tightly in his hand. I need to talk to you, he said, urgency thick in his voice. My heart raced, a different kind of apprehension sharpening my senses. What is it? I asked, my pulse hammering as he stepped closer, closing the door softly behind him. He took a breath, glancing at the ground. There's been a complication. About your surgery, we need to go over some results. The weight of his words sat heavily in the air, suffocating the space between us. I felt my heart sink, doubts creeping back in like shadows. Complication? I whispered, the fear creeping into my voice. What do you mean? Just please listen, he urged, his gaze fierce yet filled with a tenderness that conflicted my rising anxiety. You need to know what you're up against, but it's not what you think. It might not even be what we thought it was. I could only stare at him, searching his eyes for answers. What does that even mean? Then, an unexpected knock rattled the door, urgent and insistent, pulling us both back to harsh reality. Dr. Black! A voice shouted from the other side. We need you in the ER. It's a code blue. His face paled, torn between duty and the promises of connection that hovered in the air. I'll be right back, he said, voice trembling. But as he turned to leave, I grabbed his sleeve, desperation tinging my words. Please don't go yet. I need to know, Nathaniel. He looked torn, his eyes locking onto mine with an intensity that held both desperation and a flicker of hope. I promise, I'll explain everything. Just hold on, okay? He was gone before I could respond, leaving a burgeoning weight in the pit of my stomach. As the door clicked shut, I felt the isolation return with full force. The looming fear nagged at me relentlessly, but so did a strange sense of anticipation. What was he going to tell me? And would I like the answer, or would it fracture the fragile bond we were just beginning to form? Outside, the hospital bustled with activity, but inside my room, silence loomed heavy, thick with uncertainty. And just like that, I was left teetering on an emotional cliff, desperate for answers that felt just out of reach, caught between the shadows of doubt and the fragile light of connection lingering in my heart. The hours crawled by, each tick of the clock a cruel reminder of Nathaniel's absence. I pulled the thin hospital blanket tighter around my shoulders, wishing for warmth. The sterile air felt icy against my skin, but it wasn't just the cold that made me shiver, it was the suffocating worry curling around my heart. He would come back, I told myself. He had to. But time has a way of warping perception, and soon the minutes turned to an hour, then two. Anxiety bubbled within as the shadows in my room seemed to lengthen, creeping into the corners of my mind. I closed my eyes, trying to conjure the warmth of his presence. For a fleeting moment, I felt safe, but that sanctuary shattered as the reality of my situation rushed back. Whatever Nathaniel had to say was huge, and it felt like it would dictate the very course of my life. A soft knock finally broke through my fraying thoughts. It was no longer the urgency of Nathaniel's desperate visit but the gentle rap of a nurse checking in. "Just wanted to see how you were doing," she said, her voice infused with kindness. "Dr. Black is still in the ER, but he wanted you to know that he'll be back soon." "Thanks," I replied, attempting a smile, though it felt brittle even to my own lips. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was perilously wrong. As she flipped through my charts, I caught the hint of sympathy in her eyes. "You know," she began, hesitating as though weighing her words, "you're stronger than you think. I see patients come in here every day, and some of them seem to lose hope. But you fight." It's inspiring. Her encouragement was like a small candle flickering in a vast darkness, and I clung to it. "I've had a lot to fight for," I admitted, both to her and myself. It was true, hope could often feel like a luxury I could barely afford, yet she offered me a threadbare assurance that I wasn't alone. "Your doctor," she continued, placing the chart aside, "he's been in this field a long time. He cares. More than I think he's willing to admit." I replayed the nurse's words over and over, finding solace in the notion that Nathaniel's feelings might mirror my own. But before I could delve deeper into that comforting thought, another knock pulled me from my reverie. The door swung open, revealing Nathaniel, his scrubs rumpled and a dark shadow of worry etched across his features. "Sorry to keep you waiting," he said hurriedly, moving to my side. His eyes darted from mine to the floor, filled with an urgency that made my heart race again. I was caught up. There was. He paused, swallowed hard. "It was bad, and what's wrong?" I pressed, needing the truth, needing his answers to ground me. He took a deep breath, the tension crackling between us. "The results. There are some complications and we need to talk about them." He took my hand, his grip warm but trembling. It felt as though he was trying to forge a connection in the darkness, but uncertainty loomed like a storm. "You're going to need radiation therapy as a precaution," he continued, each word falling heavily against the thin silence. "But it's not definitive." "Not definitive? What does that mean exactly?" I interrupted, desperate for clarity. My heart hammered. Was my worst fear coming to fruition? "It means that whatever we found, it could be anything. We need to run more tests to determine the next steps." The room felt like it was closing in on me, and I struggled to breathe. The walls I had been trying to climb were fortified anew, transforming my fragile hope into shrapnel that cut deep. "Is it serious?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Nathaniel's eyes softened, reflecting a storm of emotions battling behind his composed exterior. "I can't say for certain yet," he admitted. "But you're not alone in this. I'm here. I'll be by your side every step of the way." His words resonated like a soothing balm, but doubts tumbled like stones in my gut. I wanted to believe him, but the looming what-ifs hung heavily in the air. I was terrified of being vulnerable, of giving so much of myself and still facing an uncertain future. As I processed the flood of emotions, Nathaniel looked intently at me, and something in the air shifted. "There's something else," he said, his voice trembling. I found something in your charts, something that might explain more about your condition." I held my breath, dread washing over me like icy water. "What do you mean?" He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture of frustration mixed with concern. "It looks like there might be a hereditary factor," he stammered, scrambling for the right words. "Conditions that run in families." "Oh God," I gasped, my mind racing. "Are you saying it could be a genetic issue?" He nodded slowly, his expression filled with empathy yet burdened with uncertainty. "I'm sorry, I should have said this sooner." "We would need to." Before he could finish, a sense of panic surged within me. My family had always been shrouded in secrecy, whispers of illness hidden beneath the surface. What if this was just the beginning? What if I was destined to follow a path of suffering carved long before I even existed? "Stop!" I cried, cutting him off, overwhelmed. "I need some air." Nathaniel opened his mouth, perhaps to argue, but the look of desperation on my face must have quelled his instincts. He stepped back, hands raised as if to calm the tumultuous storm within me. "All right, just take a moment. I'll be right outside," he said gently, retreating from the room, leaving me surrounded by a cacophony of thoughts and fears. As I sat alone, the weight of uncertainty crashed down on me, feeling heavier than any physical ailment. I was lost in a labyrinth of worry, a rush of familial ties unraveling before my eyes, terrified of what lay ahead. The walls felt like they were closing in again, and just beyond them, Nathaniel lingered, a lifeline in a sea of chaos, yet wearing his own weight of fear. Without warning, my phone buzzed on the bedside table. With trembling hands, I grabbed it, and as I glanced at the screen, my heart plummeted. It was a message from my brother, sudden, unexpected, and dreadfully out of context. "I need to talk to you. It's about Mom." An icy chill swept through me, sinking deep into my core. This was no longer just about my battle, it felt like the storm had reached into my family, threatening everything I held dear. I felt a wave of nausea crashing over me. I had just been given a glimmer of connection, but now, both my past and my future loomed ominously ahead. As tears brimmed in my eyes, I knew I was standing at yet another precipice. With every heartbeat echoing in my ears, I was thrust deeper into uncertainty, faced with the haunting realization that my journey had only just begun, and it might just take me to places I could never anticipate. I couldn't swallow the fear threatening to choke me, not with my brother's ominous message looming over my thoughts like a dark cloud. I felt completely unmoored. The reality of my situation was becoming an unshakable weight pressing down on my chest. Just moments ago, Nathaniel had been my pillar of support, but now the confines of the hospital room felt like a cage, closing in with each passing second. Desperate for clarity, I paced the length of the small room, tugging at the sleeves of the hospital gown that felt stiflingly tight. Despite the commotion in my head, a small flicker of warmth reminded me of Nathaniel's presence and the promise he had made to stand by me. But could I trust him wholeheartedly now, given the unthinkable burden we were both about to face? I glanced at the door where he had exited, half expecting him to return at any moment, a stabilizing force against the storm brewing inside me. Instead, I found myself staring blankly at the notification on my phone, replaying my brother's words in a frenzied loop. It was always about Mom, wasn't it? I could feel the fissures in my family history threatening to burst open, revealing old wounds I had thought were long since healed or buried. The walls of silence were broken only by the mechanical beeps of the machines around me and the distant murmur of voices in the hallway. I drew a shaky breath in an attempt to gather my composure. One step at a time, I told myself. The universe was pushing me toward uncertainty, and yet I had to keep moving forward. The door opened, snapping me back to the present, and Nathaniel stepped inside, his brow furrowed with concern. The moment our eyes met, I knew I had to be honest with him about everything I was feeling, but the words lodged in my throat, heavy and immovable. "How are you doing?" he asked, voice low but steady, his eyes darting to my phone before returning to my face. "Not great," I confessed, barely meeting his gaze. "My brother just messaged me about Mom." I could feel the heat rising in my cheeks, shame washing over me. It wasn't his fault, yet a part of me wished I could protect him from my chaos. A flicker of dread crossed his features, his fingers brushing his hair back as he took a measured step closer. "Is she okay?" "I don't know," I shrugged, feeling both vulnerable and exposed. "We've had issues." I thought we were finally moving past so much of it, but my voice trailed off as my resolve crumbled. What if this next chapter for me is only going to drag all of it back into the light? His expression softened, a subtle shift that felt grounding. "This isn't just about you, you know," he said softly, as though he was weighing every word. "We can't control what happens with family, but you have me. And whatever comes, we'll face it together." I wanted to cling to that reassurance, but it felt like grasping at smoke. "But what if I can't make it through this?" I said, the tremor in my voice betraying my fear. "What if I'm destined to suffer like them?" The gravity of my words hung in the air, twisting the tension between us into something palpable. There was silence, and I hated the panic roiling inside me. Was I without my strength, my hope? "Everyone has their battles," Nathaniel replied, his tone steady and unwavering. "You've already shown more bravery than many people could in your situation. And yes, there are uncertainties, but we don't have to give in to the fear. You're not destined to become them, but you can learn from their experiences." It was a beautiful sentiment, one that sparked a dim glimmer of hope inside my chest. "Maybe you're right," I conceded, forcing a small smile. For a moment, I almost believed it, but my phone buzzed again, breaking through the fragile bubble of warmth we had created. I cursed under my breath before glancing down, more anxious this time. It was my brother again, a follow-up that read simply, "It's urgent. Please respond." My heart sunk as dread replaced the warmth. Nathaniel stepped forward again, sensing my turmoil. "Do you need to take that?" he asked gently, holding my gaze. "I don't want to, but I think I should. My voice was barely above a whisper, thick with uncertainty. Okay. I'll be right here. His reassurance felt like a lifeline as I tapped my brother's message, each word draining the color from my face. All I could manage was a nod before I took a deep breath and typed back, my heart racing. What's going on? While I waited for a response, Nathaniel held my hand like a shield, anchoring me as I braced myself for whatever news would follow. Seconds turned to agonizing minutes, and as my phone finally buzzed again, I could feel my throat tighten. The message now seemed to loom ominously. It's about Mom's medical condition. You need to know the truth. Please call me. The walls felt like they were closing in again, suffocating me with a fear I didn't want to face alone. The storm in my heart escalated, and before I could stop myself, the tears streamed down my cheeks, carving trails of despair. I gasped, shaking my head in defeat as Nathaniel wrapped an arm around my shoulders, his warmth igniting a flicker of strength. What if this is worse than I can handle? I know it's a lot, Nathaniel whispered, drawing me closer but allowing space for my fear. But you're not alone. We can face this together, whatever it may be. But even as he said the words, I felt the terrible weight of the unknown pressing down, threatening to swallow me whole. The truth about my mother, the uncertainty about my health, and my family's tangled past all swirled together into an impossible knot that felt insurmountable. As I looked up at him, the soft intensity in his gaze filled me with a yearning for both love and the clarity I desperately needed. Just when I thought I found someone capable of sharing this burden, I realized we both were wading through the depths of our own scars. Then, without warning, a loud commotion erupted just outside my room, drowning out my turmoil. The unmistakable noise of distant Shatinga voice I knew all too well sent reverberations of panic through me. The door swung open again, this time not for Nathaniel, but for my brother, who stormed into the room, eyes wild and frantic. You need to come with me. Now. As the world folded around the urgency in his expression, I felt my heart seize, a maelstrom of emotions colliding within me. What had happened? And what terrible truth awaited us all just beyond those walls? The tension crackled in the air as my brother stood there, the storm in his eyes reflecting my own inner turmoil. The warmth Nathaniel had provided with his presence now felt distant, as if a great chasm had opened between us. Instinctively, I glanced back at Nathaniel, searching for his unwavering strength, but I found him taken aback, his expression morphing from concern to confusion. What's going on? I forced the words out, though they barely scraped the surface of the ocean of dread breaking over me. Mom's in trouble, my brother said, urgency lacing his voice. You need to be there. Now, wait, Nathaniel interjected, stepping forward. What do you mean? What kind of trouble? My brother's eyes darted to me, fear rasping through every syllable. They're transferring her to another hospital. It's serious. His words crashed over me like a wave, each repetition sinking in deeper, flooding my very being with panic. Why? What happened? I asked, my voice trembling despite my best efforts to hold it steady. She collapsed at home. They couldn't stabilize her. They're saying it's about her heart, he explained, his breaths short and rapid, as if he had just sprinted a marathon to reach me. The tears I had fought so hard to keep at bay began to escape again, a fresh wave of emotion pushing through the dam I had built. Why didn't you tell me sooner? I managed to choke out, the accusations mingled with the panic of not knowing what lay ahead. I didn't want to overwhelm you, especially not here, my brother said, the regret heavy in his tone. But now, you need to come. She's asking for you. Fear collided with guilt as I weighed the options before me. I should have seen this coming, known that the unspoken issues with my mother were only waiting to erupt. This was my family, and no matter how much I wanted to distance myself from our historical chaos, it was still woven into who I was. Let's go, I said in a hushed whisper, feeling the ground shift beneath my feet. I turned back to Nathaniel, his steady presence once more a shield against the turmoil threatening to swallow me. Will you come with me? I could see the conflict in his eyes, me crisis colliding with a life he had not signed up for. But just as quickly, he nodded, his resolve firm. Of course. I won't leave your side, thank you, I murmured, squeezing his hand for reassurance as my heart raced with a mix of gratitude and fear. As we followed my brother out of the room, the sterile halls of the hospital felt like an unwelcoming labyrinth. Each step reverberated with uncertainty, an echo of every worry I had kept buried. Thoughts spiraled about the kind of mother I would face. Was she still the woman I once knew? Or was she someone beyond recognition, trapped within her own chaos, We reached the ambulance bay just as they were wheeling my mother out on a stretcher. The sight of her pale, frail, and utterly vulnerable felt like a knife twisting inside my chest. The world blurred for a moment, all my fears, my past pain, the distance I had tried to maintain, it all folded back into this one painful image of Mom. I screamed, a raw pulse of desperation pouring from me as the paramedics paused in their movements. Her eyes fluttered open. They met mine, and for an instant, I could see a flicker of recognition, a painful reflection of all the times we had let each other down. "Honey?" she croaked, her voice barely audible, lost in the chaos around us. "Mom, I'm here." I rushed to her side as they prepared to lift her. "What's going on? Please hold on." "What do you need? Don't be upset," she murmured, her voice faltering. "It's just me heart." The look in her eyes, a haunting mixture of guilt and love, stole my breath. I could see the years of strain etched on her face, the weight of the past and the knowledge of all the battles lost hung heavily between us. "We need to move now," one of the paramedics urged, readying for the transfer. "Stay with me, promise," I pleaded, grasping her hand, but it felt almost weightless beneath my fingers, a whisper of what it used to be, so full of warmth and strength. "Always love you," she managed, and in that moment, something shifted within me, a quiet defiance rising against the unrelenting tide of despair. "I love you too, but we're going to get through this." I could feel the determination wrapping around my words as I steadied myself. "We're going to fight this together." With that, they wheeled her away, and as the ambulance doors slid shut, I caught a glimpse of Nathaniel at my side, his eyes wide with understanding. This storm was our storm now, and somehow, I knew we would find a way through, buoyed by the unexpected strength we both held within. But beneath the surface of our shared determination, a new fear began to gnaw at me. Was this the moment we all faced our demons, and would we be strong enough to confront the past that had haunted us for so long? As the ambulance pulled away, a realization washed over me. I couldn't ignore the truth my brother had wanted to share earlier, an urgency buried within his warnings. There was something more to my mother's condition, something that could shatter our already fragile family dynamic. With my heart racing, I turned to my brother, a question trembling on my lips. "What did you mean by she needs to see you? Why now? What is going on? What don't I know?" But before he could respond, a sudden noise reverberated through the hall. A patient's room directly beside us burst open. The figure of an older woman rushed out, clutching a record file to her chest like a lifeline. "No! You can't take her! You need to listen to me!" Her voice was frantic, eyes darting with a kind of desperation that echoed my own. My brother and I exchanged glances, caught between the urgency of my mother's situation and this stranger's wild pleas. It felt as though fate was drawing a line between our struggle and hers. What secrets lay within that file? What hidden truths were now rising like the tide against our fragile hearts? "Stay close," Nathaniel murmured beside me, and as I nodded, the chaos of the moment settled into a new rhythm, an unexpected urgency of navigating not just our reality, but those entwined around us. A storm was brewing, and just when I thought the tempest was contained, I realized we were only beginning to scratch the surface of the depths we were about to explore. The tension from the hallway hung heavily, casting shadows that wrapped around my heart, squeezing tight. The frantic woman barreling past us barely registered in my mind as I was pulled back into the specter of my mother's fragile state. Nathaniel's reassuring presence remained a constant weight beside me as we hurried forward, urgency propelling us both. "Don't let them take her!" the woman cried, her voice cracking like glass. I turned my head just in time to see the nurses rushing towards her, hands outstretched in caution while her eyes glimmered with wild desperation. My heart pounded against my ribs, a futile drumbeat matching the rush of chaotic emotion welling up inside me. "Please," the woman begged. "She can't go. I need you to believe me." And in that instant, an unsettling chord struck deep within me. What was happening here? This wasn't just a hospital, it was a harbor for fears, secrets, and stories that crisscrossed one another in ways I hardly understood. "Let's focus on Mom," I whispered to Nathaniel, trying to tear myself away from the unfolding scene. I had always found it easier to ignore the chaos around me, but now it felt like unwelcome knots were forming in the very fabric of my being. "Wait," he said, an odd contemplative look crossing his face, his focus lingering on the frantic woman. Before I could question his resolve, he walked closer, that unique bravery of his shining through. With the resolute calm I loved so much about him, he approached the woman, softening the edges of her frenzied demeanor with a gentle, what's going on? Why can't they take her? I don't know how to explain it, she stammered, her breaths jagged as though she were wading through a thick fog of fear. Her eyes darted towards me, filled with a mix of desperation and something else, something I couldn't quite place. They're trying to take her away, but if they do, she'll never come back. You have to understand. She's not ready. She needs help. The word help spun in circles around my consciousness, weaving itself into the tapestry of my own mother's plight. I felt the ground shift dramatically beneath my feet, and my pulse quickened as new threads of dread tangled around my heart. Who are you? Nathaniel asked, a hint of authority woven into his tone as if asserting his own stake in this unfolding tragedy. Her name is Abigail, I murmured softly, almost as a promise to myself, steps towards understanding bridging us together. As I turned my gaze towards the woman, I felt the pounding in my heart intensify. What do you mean? Why is she not ready? She's one of them, Abigail said, her voice trembling like a quivering leaf caught in a breeze. One of the patients. They've been experimenting on her, trying to control her heart condition. But it's not just a medical issue. They've changed her. My thoughts tangled in disarray as disbelief collided with dread. My mother had been seeking treatment, but now it seemed the very system meant to protect our family was harboring secrets more terrifying than I could fathom. I could feel Nathaniel's eyes searching mine, a silent question hanging between us like fragile glass. Unmoored and desperate for clarity, I grasped Nathaniel's hand even tighter, feeling his warmth bleed into me as I mumbled, "What do we do?" "Listen to her," he whispered back, his voice steady. "She needs us. We owe it to your mom to find out the truth." As we gathered around Abigail, I studied her face, the fear etched into her features a haunting mirror of my own rising panic. The weight of worry began contorting within me. What were they trying to hide? What depths could we dredge up regarding my mother's condition? It could easily tumble us beyond repair, but even as despair loomed like a dense fog, a flicker of resilience sparked inside me. Just moments before my world collapsed into chaos, my mother had summoned warmth, courage, and the kind of love that felt limitless. Perhaps we weren't truly alone in this. "Can you take me to her?" I asked, feeling the knot in my throat choke every word. "Please, we need to find out what's happening. We have to be there." Abigail's nod was immediate, fueled by an urgency that matched the rising storm within me. "I'll show you, but you have to be ready to confront what's lurking behind the walls." With Nathaniel by my side, I felt a flicker of hope weaving its way through the hems of my fear. Yes, there was chaos waiting ahead, but we had an anchor. We had each other. Together, we would navigate the maze of secrets and pain that loomed within the confines of the very hospital meant to guard our family's well-being. As Abigail led the way, I could feel my heart pounding again in rhythm with the uncertain truth waiting beyond each step. What awaited us in that sterile, fluorescent-lit space could either be the linchpin to healing or a bombshell that would rend us asunder. The moment grew heavier as the woman turned back, a discontented shadow passing over her face. "But there's something else," she added, her voice wavering as she paused just outside the closed doors. "You need to know this. You might not like what you find." And just like that, the fragile fibers of my burgeoning hope began to intertwine with a deeper sense of dread. The shadows of secrets whispered around us, urging me to consider the weight of the unknown, the potential darkness lurking beneath the surface of my mother's heart, even as my own beat in defiance against the chaos threatening to consume us all. Every footfall echoed like an unanswered question as we traversed the stark hallway. The sterile air around us felt thick with unease, turning each breath into an act of courage. Abigail led us through the hospital's winding corridors, her posture tense, as though each step could unearth the very darkness she warned us about. It was surreal to stand at the precipice of the unknown, uncertainty pulling at my insides like a tide threatening to sweep me under. Nathaniel remained close, a steadfast anchor in my storm of emotions. His hand in mine felt like a lifeline, grounding me while I wrestled with desperation and the flicker of hope that had ignited within me only moments ago. We arrived at a door marked with a small placard, "Patient 612. Abigail paused for a moment, her expression a cocktail of fear and resolve. "Once you go in, just be prepared. Whatever you see, hold on to each other." My heart raced like wild horses in a stampede as I grasped the handle. It felt heavy, as though the weight of impending revelations pressed down on it. I exchanged a glance with Nathaniel, whose unwavering determination filled me with a strength I desperately needed. I pushed the door open. Inside, the room was bathed in a cold, clinical light that stirred the air and blanketed everything in a monotone color scheme. The beeping of machines and the rustle of sterile sheets created an unsettling symphony that enveloped us. And there, in the center of it all, covered with a thin layer of blankets, lay my mother, her face illuminated by a fragile glow yet marred by distress. "Mom?" I whispered, barely able to shake off the swell of emotion rising in my throat. It felt like I hadn't seen her in ages, not since our last visit to the hospital, when hope still clung to the corners of our conversations like sunlight filtering through dark clouds. Her eyes flickered open, confusion clouding her features, but then recognition swept over her. "Oh, my darling, what are you doing here?" She breathed, her voice weak yet tender. Before I could respond, Abigail stepped forward, her voice tinted with empathy. "You're not alone, Helen. We're here to help." My mother's gaze shifted from Abigail's fierce determination to Nathaniel's solid presence and then to me. "Help?" she echoed, pain lining her voice. "These walls, they've kept something from me, from all of us. What do you mean?" I asked, my heartbeat drumming against my ribs. "What's happening with you?" My hands gripped her blanket, the familiar texture transporting me back to times when comfort was abundant and uncertainty felt far away. She inhaled deeply, steadying her breath. "I thought it was just my heart, but this place, they've taken more than they've given. They don't want us to see," but her voice faltered slightly, eyes darting toward Abigail as if searching for confirmation. "I can feel there's something deeper twisted, like shadows in my mind. An unsettling dread settled in my gut." "What do you mean? What are they doing to you? To anyone?" Before my mother could respond, the door swung open abruptly, and a doctor strode in, cloaked in an air of authority that felt suffocating. His eyes flicked from my mother to Abigail, recognition sparking a flare of tension in the room. "What's going on here?" he demanded, swift to regain control of the narrative. Abigail, unfazed, stepped forward. "We're just trying to understand Helen's condition. She deserves transparency just as any other patient." The doctor's brow furrowed, and then a thin smile crept across his lips, a smile that sent shivers down my spine. "Transparency," he echoed, an ominous inflection in his voice. "You have no idea what happens behind the curtain of this hospital. Maybe you should enlighten us," Nathaniel interjected, his grip tightening on my hand, sending warmth flooding through me, grounding me once again amid the rising storm. "Caution is advisable for those who wish to dig too deep," the doctor replied, his tone growing icy as he maintained eye contact with Abigail. "But I fear your eagerness is leading you into precarious territory." The atmosphere shifted, vibrating with the weight of unsaid truths, and Abigail's eyes flashed with a resolve I admired but did not fully understand. "You can't hide this any longer," she challenged. "What are you doing to these patients?" The doctor's lips curled into a sardonic smile, but it slipped as his patience wore thin. "You'll realize soon that knowledge comes with a price," he warned, glancing at my mother. "Consider this your last warning. Stay out of matters that do not concern you." With that, he stepped back, but not before locking eyes with me, a fleeting moment where something cold and uncaring flickered. The heaviness in that gaze sent a tremor through my resolve. "Trust me, sweetheart. You don't want to go down this rabbit hole," he added before leaving, the door clicking shut behind him with an unnerving finality. Silence engulfed the room, thick and suffocating, as I turned to look at my mom and Abigail, pieces of the unsettling puzzle swirling chaotically in my mind. Something was lurking just beneath the surface here, something I had yet to comprehend fully. Just then, a soft cry escaped my mother's lips. "It's not just about my heart. It's about our family." The truth's buried deeper than anyone wants to admit. Panic clawed at my throat as I struggled to stitch together fragments of our reality. "What truth?" My voice broke, anguish spilling into the space we occupied. "What do you mean?" But just as she opened her mouth to reply, her eyes suddenly widened, staring beyond me at the door, which had opened once more with a dull creak. A figure stood silhouetted against the harsh hallway lights, a nurse, her expression unreadable, yet deeply unsettling. "You need to come with me," she said flatly, her voice devoid of empathy, as though her heart had been expertly severed from her purpose. And in that moment, as fear coursed through me and shadowed the edges of every thought, I realized that the ground beneath us had shifted irrevocably, leaving us teetering precariously on the edge of some dark abyss none of us truly understood. The nurse's presence sent ripples of confusion and fear through the room, and I instinctively stepped closer to my mother, shielding her as if I could ward off the unknown. The nurse's eyes, devoid of warmth, scanned the room, and a chill prickled along my spine. "Come with me, please," she repeated, her tone insistently flat. There was no room for argument, and something told me that resisting would come at a price too steep for any of us to pay. "Where are you taking her?" Nathaniel demanded, stepping forward, his protective instincts igniting a spark of bravery in me. I felt his resolve blend with my own, our combined strength tethering me in a moment where fear could have threatened to swallow me whole. The nurse's lips tightened, and her expression soured. No questions. Just follow the protocol. It's for her safety, she shot back, but the lack of sincerity in her response sent another shiver through me. Safety? I echoed incredulously, my voice rising as panic sliced through my rational thoughts. How is this safe? She needs us. You can't just take her from us, she's not in a condition to make that decision, the nurse responded, her patience worn thin. Please, I'm asking you to respect hospital procedure. Abigail stood firm, her gaze unwavering. You're not taking her anywhere until we know what's truly happening, she asserted, the challenge evident in her tone. Just then, my mother's fragile voice broke through the thick veneer of tension. You should listen to them, she croaked, the tremor in her voice highlighting the fragility of the moment. I want to know what's going on too. The nurse flinched at my mother's plea, and for a brief moment, an almost imperceptible shadow of empathy flickered in her eyes. But it vanished as quickly as it came, replaced by the cold demeanor that had become all too familiar in this place. It's not up to you, she snapped, a hint of desperation in her voice, as if there was more at stake here than we understood. Nobody has to go anywhere until you give us answers, Nathaniel insisted firmly, stepping closer to my mother as if to shield her from the impending storm. I'll call security, the nurse threatened. This is your last warning. That threat reverberated in the air like a tolling bell, and my stomach churned. I couldn't let fear dictate our actions. No, I said, my voice sharper than I expected. If you're telling the truth, then we deserve to know what's happening to her, to everyone. You claim it's for her safety, but what's happening behind those doors? For a heartbeat, silence hung heavy in the air, and the nurse's steely facade cracked ever so slightly. Some things she hesitated, perhaps weighing the risk against the truth. Some procedures are delicate, and not all families can handle the knowledge of what really happens. My family is stronger than you think. I shot back, my voice rising despite the quaver threading through it. In that instant, something flickered behind her carefully constructed wall as her gaze softened just a fraction, a small window into the struggle I could almost sense deep within her. It's not always about strength. Sometimes, it's about survival. Please, my mother croaked again, reaching her hand out to me. Just stay with me. The nurse took a step back, a flicker of indecision playing across her features, and for one glorious moment, hope ignited within me. If you take her now, you might not get the chance to understand, I pressed, my heart pounding, pleading with this woman to find some humanity hidden beneath her layers of professionalism and compliance. Before she could respond, the door swung open once more, revealing another figure, a young intern whose nervous energy filled the room like a palpable force. Nurse Jennings. You're needed in the prep room. It's urgent, he said, glancing from her to my mother with an air of urgency that felt unnaturally out of place. Not now, she snapped, frustration looming larger than the nurse's own sense of duty. In dealing with a situation here, the doctors want you to come now. It was an order, not a suggestion, and it sent a wave of apprehension cascading through my body. The nurse clenched her jaw, torn, eyes darting between the intern and us. Stay here, she instructed, her voice low and tight. Don't leave this room. With that, she turned and stormed out, shoulders tense, the intern trailing behind her like a puppet. A tense silence filled the space, and I turned back to my mother, whose expression mirrored my inner turmoil. What do they want with you? I whispered, the anxiety coiling tightly in my chest. I don't know, she whispered back, her brow furrowing as if the effort of speaking was too much for her fractured spirit. But there's something deep down, I can feel it. There's a reason they don't want us to know. Nathaniel's fingers intertwined with mine tighter than before, grounding me further amid the chaos. This was only the beginning. I could sense a storm brewing, unstoppable like the tide. Just then, I caught a flicker of movement in the corner of my eye. The door creaked open again, and I faced it with a sense of dread and trepidation, almost expecting more revelations or threats. But what I saw took my breath away. A small boy stood there, his eyes wide and fearful, clutching a crumpled piece of paper in his hand. Are you looking for the truth? He asked, voice tremulous, yet eerily steady, as if he carried burdens beyond his years. I felt the world around me start to tilt once more as he took a trembling step forward, and the air grew thick with an impending clarity that could either bridge the gap of understanding or break us apart completely. The room fell silent as the boy's question hung in the air, charged with a weight I could scarcely comprehend. His innocence, juxtaposed against the chaos that surrounded us, struck a chord deep within me. "What do you mean?" I managed to ask, my throat constricted with emotion. The boy shifted his gaze between my mother and me. "I heard things that people shouldn't hear," he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "Sometimes, the truth isn't safe, but it's still the truth." "What kind of things?" Nathaniel interjected, stepping forward protectively, as if he could physically shield us from whatever ominous revelations the boy might bring. "I can't say too loud," the boy replied urgently, a flicker of fear flickering in his eyes. "But if you really want to know, you have to listen closely." He glanced back toward the door, as if sensing threats lurking just beyond the threshold. Whether physical or intangible, I couldn't tell, but a shiver crawled up my spine. Without waiting for permission, the boy took several steps further into the room, casting furtive glances back toward the exit before he unfurled the paper he clutched tightly. "This," he said, showing us a sketch, a dark scribble of lines depicting what appeared to be the hospital's layout. "I drew it from my head, but I think it helps find the places that people don't want you to see." I leaned closer, my heart racing as I took in the drawing. Amidst the chaotic lines, I recognized a few rooms, some distinctly marked with warning signs, restricted access, special procedures, and one label in particular sent a wave of dread through me. "Observational room, what's in there?" I asked, my voice barely more than a breath. The boy's eyes widened. "It's where they take people who need to be fixed," he said, uncertainty threading his tone, but there was a conviction behind his eyes that made my stomach twist. "Sometimes, they don't come back." My mother inhaled sharply, her fingers trembling against my arm. "You've seen them take people?" she asked, her voice breaking. "Yeah," the boy confirmed, "but when they put the tarp over the stretcher it's because they don't want you to see." His small brow furrowed, and I could see the shadows of fear playing across his youthful features. It wasn't just the hospital he feared, but what it might do to those who became entangled in its web. "What are they fixing?" I pressed, feeling urgency seize my heart. My mother needed answers, and in this boy's eyes, I sensed a flicker of bravery that mirrored my own desperate determination. The boy gulped, looking down at his feet, the confidence that illuminated him moments before dimming slightly. "Things that hurt people, or when people are not themselves anymore. Sometimes they hurt because they think it's for safety." But his voice trailed off, and I felt every heartbeat echoing with unspoken truths. My mind raced. What if my mother had been part of that? The cold weight of dread threatened to cocoon me as I tried to piece together the implications of everything I had heard. Just then, the door burst open again, and the nurse reappeared, her expression a tempest of disarray. "What's going on here?" she barked, eyes wide, as her gaze fell upon the boy. Instinctively, my body moved to shield him from her glare, but another voice cut through the tension, calm yet unmistakably authoritative. "I do believe you've gone against protocol." Nurse Jennings, a man in a pristine suit, stepped in, his presence commanding the room with an unwavering confidence. His demeanor was nothing short of sinister, and I felt a chill wrap itself tighter around me as I met his steely gaze, quickly shifting my focus back to my mother. Nurse Jennings straightened, instinctively shutting down the conversation that had been brewing. "I'm in control here," she stated defiantly, but uncertainty lingered in her eyes as she glanced at the suit-clad man. "Control is a precarious thing," he replied smoothly, giving the impression that every word was calculated to unsettle. "I suggest you tread carefully with the truth." The boy's eyes darted between the figures in authority, and realization crashed over me. Whoever this man was, he was entwined with the machinery of this hospital, a cog in a larger, insidious plan. Panic seeped into my veins, forcing the breath from my lungs, and I realized in that moment, our small rebellion might not just challenge the nurse, but the very core of the system we faced. With the pressure building and uncertainty uncoiling inside me, I wouldn't let this moment slip away without a fight. I took a step forward, edging my resolve into the forefront. "What do you want with my mother?" I demanded, my voice shaking yet resolutely as if I could summon the strength of 1,000 hearts to challenge the very foundations of the frail truths we had unearthed. The man smiled, a chilling gesture that carried no warmth. "You'll find out soon enough. The truth has a way of exposing itself," he said, then turned on his heel, and with that, the room felt darker than before, shadows wrapping themselves around us both tightly and unnervingly. The boy echoed my own silent fear, inching back, clenching his paper as if it held the key to our escape. I could feel uncharted storms brewing around us, an undeniable presence of fate urging us closer to the precipice of revelation. My heart pounded as I glanced between the boy and my mother, a desperate plea mirrored in both their eyes. The nurse shifted uncomfortably, instinctively aligning herself with the man, and in the charged atmosphere, a new dread began to settle. Some truths could be salvaged, but at what price? And in that moment, it struck me, revelations awaited, but with every breath, they also carried danger, desperately intertwined with the precarious balance of our fragile hopes. What lay ahead would be a labyrinth of choices, yet as uncertainty loomed, I dared to hope against hope. Would the darkness swallow us whole, or could we find a way to navigate through? I forced myself to breathe, the charged air around us heavy with the echoes of the unknown. Everything I cared about was hanging by a thread, and yet I could feel a flicker of determination igniting deep within me. The boy's fearful gaze tugged at my heart, a reminder that our journey had become much larger than the journey of my mother's problem. This was about exposing a truth that could unravel the very fabric of this hospital. Please just listen, I said, turning my attention back to those present in the room, willing to confront the sudden surge of animosity. My family has faced enough secrets and lies. Whatever is going on here, we deserve to know the full truth. You owe my mother that much. The words hung in the air, dense and palpable, waiting for acknowledgement. The nurse's eyes flashed with uncertainty, caught between her duties and the faint glimmer of compassion she had inadvertently shown. But the man in the suit stood silently, calculating, watching. You think this is about your mother? The man in the suit finally replied, his voice low, each syllable deliberate and dripping with condescension. This is bigger than your family, little girl. It's about control, order, stability. And with that, I felt the ground beneath my feet quiver. Was it true? Were they willing to sacrifice lives for some twisted version of safety? My thoughts spun into chaos as I tried to grasp the implications of what he was saying. Order? I echoed incredulously. At the cost of people's lives, their dignity, their reality? He didn't flinch, the indifference in his eyes was chilling. The patients here have been chosen for a reason. You'd do well to remember that. The boy's grip tightened around the crumpled drawing, his innocence fighting against the shadows of maturity forced upon him. My heart went out to him. He had seen too much simply by being here, entangled within a web of gray morality that belied the promises of healing. But there's still people. They're more than just numbers or experiments. I shouted, desperation scraping my throat raw. A mother can be a mother, even in the quietest choices, the man replied calmly. But your pleas will not change the inevitable, and what is that? My voice wavered but held, unyielding. What about the truth you're so desperately trying to hide? He stared at me, the corners of his lips curling up in a condescending smile that felt like a slap in the face. The truth is subjective, my dear. What you see as medical negligence, we see as progress. And progress always comes at a cost. Progress? I gasped, panic surging within me as realization dawned. It wasn't just my mother anymore. It was a battle for lives, identities, and the notion of what it meant to be whole in a world that turned its back on the suffering of others. Let's not turn yourself into a martyr, he continued, stepping closer. You think you are the first to challenge our methods? You are merely another echo in a long line of voices lost in the abyss. A whisper drowned out by the machinery meant to protect. Suddenly, weighted by anguish, I felt my mother's gentle hand on my arm, grounding me to where I truly needed to be. You're wrong, she murmured, though her voice shimmered with frailty. The truth has power, and if they feared us discovering it, then it's not just about order but something more. She caught her breath, and in that moment, I saw the flicker of old fire igniting, the embodiment of the strength I had always admired in her. You're not taking me anywhere. You may have twisted my heart, but you'll never twist my spirit, she declared, her voice gaining strength as she met the man's gaze unflinchingly. Mom, I breathed, a mix of reverence and pride filling my chest. She was still here, still fighting in ways I had long forgotten. She reminded me of our lineage, our resilience passed down through whispered secrets and battled truths. What happened to your heart? The boy asked softly, breaking through the tension, and her eyes found mine as she prepared to reveal something deeper, something that felt poised to crack our world open even further, and then it hit me in a sudden wave of clarity. Whatever was buried beneath the surface had forged a connection that transcended our fears. Mom, what do you know? I pressed, desperation lacing my voice. What truths have you clung to in the dark? In that moment, as the boys' anticipation swirled in the air like a soft breeze gracing the edges of a storm, my mother inhaled deeply. They treat us like we are parts of a game, using our pain to reconstruct their ideas of safety. But true healing doesn't flourish in the darkness. A sudden realization jolted through Met. His wasn't just about her condition but about an institution willing to twist the very essence of humanity. The boy shifted beside me, his bravery urging me along, and Nathaniel, standing steadfast as my fortress, reminded me that we were never truly alone. So, we have to fight, I breathed, adrenaline coursing through my veins, weaving hope through despair. Each face in the room had become a part of a larger narrative. The boy, my mother, Nathaniel. This wasn't just our fight. It was for every soul tethered to the shadows of sickness. Let's start digging, I said, determination lining every syllable, like a rallying cry for all those who had ever felt boxed in by fear and uncertainty. As we locked eyes, fueled by the realization that in truth lay resilience, a swell of warmth surged through me, a unity marked by purpose. The burden we faced was heavy, but together, we would carve our own path. I turned back to the door, ready to summon the strength we needed to unveil the secrets lurking behind these walls. Let's find the heart of this place, I proclaimed, emboldened by the knowledge that honesty and courage could pierce through the darkest corridors of despair, and with that, we strode forward. Whatever awaited us, we would face it together, one heartbeat, one truth at a time. The weight felt lighter, for we now stood as a tumultuous chorus against silence, finding the freedom we all yearned for. In that moment of bravery, I realized our lives were no longer dictated by the whims of circumstance, they would be driven by the choices we made and the truths we'd unveil along the way. Then we'll make sure they hear us, I declared, feeling the warmth of connection, of family, shimmer through the shadows. And just as I took a step toward the unknown, I knew we had forged something indelibly, a resolve that would withstand the storm and create light from darkness, lighting our path forward through whatever came next. Together, I murmured as we ventured forth, unified against the tide of despair. The finality of our footsteps echoed louder than any fear, resonating through the hospital walls like a promise. This fight, this truth, our evergreen courage would rise and echo long after we were gone. And in that moment, against uncertainty, hope surged anew, together becoming not just a word, but a promise intertwined with the very essence of our journey.